I saw one of your top videos that on TikTok, and it was talking about how we are gods. So why don't you talk to me a little bit about what do you mean by that?
Yes. That comment would have caused me to yell blasphemy probably 7 or 8 months ago.
What if I told you that everything you know is just the beginning? Beyond the veil of the ordinary lies a realm of hidden knowledge, ancient wisdom, and untapped potential. A place where consciousness expands, reality bends, and the impossible becomes possible. You weren't meant to stay asleep. You were meant to awaken. Open your mind, remember who you truly are, and step with me beyond the frequency 369. Hey, before you start the episode, if you're on YouTube or Rumble, like, subscribe, and hit that bell. You want to make a comment? Go for it. It's America. If you catch me on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, hit me with those 5 stars. I appreciate the support. Let's start the show. Welcome back to Beyond the Frequency 369. I'm your host, Cesar Pagan. Today's guest is someone whose energy truly speaks for itself. You may know her as @Bex Starling on TikTok, where she's been lighting up timelines with messages of empowerment, energetic alignment, and what it really means to step into your highest self. Bex is a guide, a creator, and a voice for those looking to awaken their power. Whether she's helping you reset your energy or shift your mindset, she reminds us that we're more in control than we think of our bodies, our frequencies, and our future. I'm excited to dive in today and learn more about her journey, her message, and how we can all rise a little higher. Bex, welcome to the show. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. All right, Bex, before we dive into all the cool things that you're going to share with us today, let's get to know you just a little bit. So if you can tell the audience how they can find you and give us a little bit of when someone asks you, Bex, what do you do? How do you describe what you do to everybody? Go for it.
So you can find me on TikTok and on Instagram as well as YouTube. I believe the YouTube channel is Broken to Beautiful. That one's fairly new, so we're still working on that. And TikTok, either @Bex Starling or our community is called Awaken to Power. We're on the Heartbeat app. So if you wanted a community to join to figure out what you're going through and how to maneuver it, that's a really good community space. And then what was my next question?
And the next question was, when someone asks you, like, how would you describe what you do? Like, where do you start?
Yeah. Well, I'm very fortunate that I am an entrepreneur. So if I want to take the easy road, I can always speak to the businesses that I have that are normal per se. But I have had my higher self challenging me to step out a little more. If Jesus made himself of no reputation, then so shall I. So recently, when people have asked, what do you do? I say, I'm an awakening coach.
I like it.
There are several, that's awesome. That's great. Or I had one person say, do you have any big plans for the weekend? And I said, yeah, I'm going to be coaching my mentorship program this weekend. So I'm really excited. Oh, that's great. What do you mentor people in? I said, I help them walk through their awakening process. And of course, that one person said, what does that mean? I said, well, the best way to describe it, if I were to ask you, who are you? What would you say? And of course, they didn't really have an answer. And they said, maybe that means I need to be a part of your mentorship. I said, well, only you know.
What a great like invitation, because you kind of made someone think when they weren't trying to think. They're like, man, like, because I mean, a lot of people have even problems when they go for a job interview and they ask you, tell me a little bit about yourself. Even the superficial stuff is even hard for them to even describe. So when you go a little bit deeper in that layer of who are you? I don't mean this, I mean you. Not a lot of folks can answer that. So that's a great segue into this. I saw one of your top videos that on TikTok, and it was talking about how we are gods. So why don't you talk to me a little bit about what do you mean by that?
Yes. That comment would have caused me to yell blasphemy probably 7 or 8 months ago, but it is true. We are all the same essence as the source of everything, which some people call God, some people call it universe. But truthfully, just like you probably have nicknames, so do I. There's really not a name that is right or wrong. It's just what we give the name to of the great power that powers that be, I guess is the best way to say it. But for me, I came into this reality knowing about 90% of truth. I was already connected, which we all are. When we come into this reality, we come with no limiting beliefs. And so, therefore, we all are resonating at the knowing of who we are. And it's only through experiencing this reality for extended periods of time where we began taking on the beliefs of those around us. And then those limiting beliefs shift us into the unknown, the idea of separation. I remember being in bed at 10 years old, and I received this phrase that said, "You are the only real human here. Everyone else is something of a robot or an alien, and they're here to help you prove your goodness." And we talk about hearing the voice of God or hearing the intuition, which nothing is really audible, so we don't really hear it. But I received it, and I received it in a way that what I knew without a doubt was that I was here on a mission, different than anyone else. Not that I was special, not that I was higher or better or greater, but that I came with a job to do. And that job was to prove my goodness. What the best way for me to describe it was I knew that I was a costume that God was living and experiencing reality through. And I also knew, just from scriptures from my Christian upbringing, was that as long as I held the characteristics of God, then I had the same power that God had. The Bible says life and death are in the power of the tongue, and that there's nothing impossible with God. You can pretty much have or do anything with God, which to me symbolized you have to act as God. And the way God acts is everything is me. So, like, I never wanted to litter because that was God. The ground is God. The litter is God. Like, just disposing of something mindlessly was not taking God serious. I was very big into rescuing animals because they were all God too, just in a different form. So I was always passionate about loving people and loving things so much as this rubber band. I mean, it's still part of creation and it's sacred. And I always had that knowing. And so I always lived my life as if somebody's always watching me because they always are. Because I know that and I've known it since I was a kid. And it wasn't a burden. It didn't feel as if I had someone breathing down my neck. It's the life that's going to serve you the best, and it is the best for you. And so to know that someone was watching made it easier to keep myself aware of my own actions and my own thoughts. So I knew that, I came knowing that. I had no idea that I had access to those kind of thoughts and that was different. I just assumed everyone else did. Something struck me as odd when there was a lot of people in my life that were on antidepressants, which I didn't understand because I'd never experienced fear or worry or anxiety ever a day in my entire life. Because I knew as long as I lived my life as if, then everything would work out perfectly for me. So I had nothing to worry about. There was no need to worry. And then I would have conversations with people. They would ask me questions, and when I would share with them something from just the knowledge that I had, you could see they paused as if they were listening, but when they began speaking, it was as if they had heard nothing I said. It was as if that part of the time frame was cut out and it didn't even happen. And so I learned really quickly that unless someone was actually asking me a question, that if I just asserted my opinion or my advice, it wasn't heard. And it was only received if they asked the question. And I learned just through experience that don't assert anything into someone else's experience. If they are God too and they have a question, they will ask you. And if they're not asking you, then it is not a door open for you to give. So I knew all of those things. But if you had mentioned energy or frequency, or chakras or yoga or meditation or anything of that nature, I would have said, "Get thee behind me, Satan," because that's not, that's not God. And it's now coming full circle. It all started in 2016. I had a head injury that was pretty significant. And all that to say, I pretty much lost all of those memories. I lost access to knowing that I was God, knowing that I created my own reality, knowing anything. Because from there, my memory was affected, and it was by design. I know without a shadow of a doubt that it was something that I planned to happen before I ever came. As a matter of fact, the thoughts that I had have incrementally come back to me more in the last 6 months than over the last 9 years. Just in the last 6 months, they've come really aware, so much so that last week I was sitting still and I remembered sitting in the waiting room, and I hadn't remembered this thought in some time. Sitting in the waiting room the day that the head injury occurred. I was at the doctor's office. I was having some spinal injections for some pain, and I'd never had anything like this happen or done before. Now, I remember sitting in the waiting room, and I received, "You will not walk out of here today." But there was no fear with it. It was just, "You will not walk out of here today." Well, I knew what the devil's voice felt like, and I knew what God's voice felt like. And it didn't feel like the devil's voice. And I knew that God would never injure me. So I just discounted it as, it's nothing. I'm not going to. I mean, for a split second, I thought, oh, I'm not having this procedure done. I'm not doing this. But then something just washed over me like, yeah, just do it. And sure enough, I was ambulanced out of that pain management building to a hospital, and then spent the next 3 years recovering from a very significant head injury, skull fracture, um, nystagmus, which is shifting of the eyes. And that was the beginning for me of the darkest days of my entire life. I, for the first time, experienced anxiety, depression, and lost all access to those higher thoughts that I had lived with my whole life. And in the moment, I just wanted to die. And when I say moment, it was 3 years of pure darkness. And then I would say after that was when I started kind of figuring out how to get to the light, and then just incrementally finding things that made me feel like living every day, and slowly but surely started putting the pieces back together, and then coming full circle. I know exactly why, because in order to know something for sure true, you have to experience it. And I know how I lost all of those memories was because I tuned to the frequency where they didn't exist. And to this day, if fear strikes me, I lose access to all of them again. And I even had this conversation with my higher self, God, universe, whatever. Why am I experiencing this now? Like, I went my entire life without it. And what I received was, you never experienced those lower dimensions. So because you had never experienced them, you didn't even know how to get there. But now you've been there. It's just a matter of knowing what it feels like and staying out of it. And that's what we're here for, to master this energetic frequency world so that we can live in these three-dimensional bodies with love and light, and and excitement and fun, but it's a process.
Yeah. I love all that. I first of all, I appreciate you sharing, being open with your low points and your high points and your transition. So let's break some of that stuff down because there's a lot of good stuff in there. Let's go back to when you say you were 10 years old. You when you heard this voice, and I may be paraphrasing it, where you mentioned where you've heard that you're the only real thing that exists, was it kind of like saying that the world, the reality, your reality tunnel, if you will, or your bubble exists for you and for you only to experience this? Am I interpreting that how you took it?
It's not how I took it, although I can see how if you're just verbalizing it, that's how it would be perceived. That wasn't how I took it at all. The way that I took it was, um, everything was in on the game, but I was the only one being tested. It was that everyone was one. It was, I think because again, it's a feeling that but
Yeah.
I didn't feel like it wasn't this thing like, here's a world where everyone's asleep and I'm the only one awake and I'm the only one with the power. It was more of, you're in a simulation and everything is one. I can say it this way now. I couldn't probably say it this way when I was a kid, but the best way to say um, it was all one. And I was living it in order to experience it and still stay in the mindset of goodness, knowing that every single person's reactions or responses had nothing to do with me and it had only to do with them and their life experiences. And so I never had to take it personally. I could just see the hurt in them and love them anyway. So much so as I was trying to figure out how to word these things because people call things trauma that doesn't necessarily have to be trauma if you understand there is a greater purpose for everything. But
Mm.
by the world standards, I had what the world would call experiences of sexual molestation as a kid. Now, I'm not making light of it by any means, and I did have a question about that, and it got my answer. But all that to say, I remember, even as a young child, thought, bless their hearts, they have no idea that this is not going to bring them joy. It's not about
Dang.
me. Yeah, it's not about me. I know it's not about me. It's just a really hurt person that is looking for something to bring them some sort of relief from their pain. And they think that by touching me, it's going to bring them relief, but it's not. And, those experiences started when I was 5. And at 5, I remember thinking, it's not about me. It's
At
just not about
5 years old, you thought like this?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating. And just to be clear here, like, when my guests come on here, there's nothing for me to judge. There's nothing for me to say, oh, that's wrong or that's weird. That doesn't make sense. I believe your truth. And I'm just fascinated with what you just said because it's very interesting. Like, it's not something that some would call normal, a normal way that a 5-year-old will perceive, especially a situation like that, if anything. So I commend you for that. And I'm sorry that you went through that as well, but I see that you now understand that that was an experience, so there's really no judgment for it. So good on you on that as well. The way that I'm seeing that I think that you perceive the world is that you understand that there's no good or bad situation. It's all an experience that you need to have. Do I understand that right about you?
Yeah, and I don't like to use the word need because we don't really need anything. I mean, truth be told, this feels very real, but it's not. Everything is energy. Nothing is really solid. When we when we leave this three-dimensional reality, we just become non-physical. We just ascend into a frequency that no longer holds us together into something solid. So this is, like people say, oh, it's just a movie or it's a 3D matrix or it's a hologram. Well, it is. It doesn't make it any less challenging or the emotions are still very real, but I try to be very careful with my words because that's something that again, was a very big part of the first part of my life before I'd gone through the darkness, was words can be interpreted so many ways. So be very careful how you word it. But I know without a doubt that absolutely nothing in this reality happens by accident. And even the things that you don't like and you can't explain or you don't understand, trust me when I say it has a bigger purpose. So much so that I was getting dressed one day and I was in my bathroom and I'm putting on my makeup and I received, "What if I said to you, you wanted to be molested when you were a child?" And I'm in the middle of putting on my makeup and I dropped my makeup and I stood back from the mirror because you're very aware of that voice because it's coming from within you and it's all you. I mean, even when you don't want to claim it, it's all you. And I remember stepping back from that mirror and out loud, I said, "Okay, I get that that didn't affect me the way that it has affected some people. But for you to say that I wanted it, that's twisted. And I'm going to need a whole lot more explanation than that."
Right.
And I just sat quietly and I received, wanted to be a mother more than anything. That was the one thing you wanted to come to experience. And you wanted to protect your children from everything. So you knew if you chose that to be part of your experience as a child, you would know exactly what to look for in order to protect your children. And I just
Wow.
started crying. And I was like, that's exactly it. Without a shadow of a doubt, that is exactly it. And I'm not saying that's for everyone, but for
Yeah.
me, it was 100% correct. And I knew without a shadow of a doubt because that was one of the major things that I did. My children they weren't sheltered, but I was very open with them that there are some people who are hurt and they do reach for children to make themselves feel better. And we don't ever know what those people are like because they don't show that side of themselves in public. And so for that reason, they could have as many people come and stay with us as they wanted. But when it came to spending the night off, I would be very, very selective about who they went to spend the night off with.
Yeah, so it sounds like you I don't want to say needed, right? So it sounds like you planned in some sense this experience so then you can learn from it, so then you can be able to look out for it when it comes to your children. Is that right?
Yes.
What a beautiful thing. What a beautiful thing. So you mentioned a lot uh, about that you understand this is an experience and that you come from somewhere else. So let's talk about this somewhere else. How do you define this somewhere else? Do you have a name for it? You've been there? Talk to me about that other place if you can.
Yeah. Well, I remember the first time that I heard the verse in the Bible where it says that you are in this world, but not of this world. And immediately oh my gosh, it took me all the way back to being 10 years old, laying in my bed when I received, like that whole saying. And I don't know that there are words that will truly define it in a way that will resonate with everyone. But from my perspective, again, these are puzzle pieces that I kind of put together as I was going through my awakening. Because when I went into the darkness, although I was a very devout Christian girl, did all of the right things because I was going to magnify the characteristics of God. So I'm not saying that I was perfect, but I did do my very best to really live that loudly. When I went through the darkest days and when things started happening in my life that didn't make sense and felt like I had no control, whereas I felt like I had control my entire life, I turned completely atheist because I thought I lived my life as if somebody was watching me every day and I did it every single day, meaning I lived with, like, integrity no matter what. Just did it. I knew I was being watched, and so I always made decisions that were of the highest integrity. Again, not to say I was perfect, but and then if you can live like that, and then all of the things that happened to me happened, then what is there even? Because if you're living with, the utmost integrity, following the good girl path, and all of these things are happening now that had never happened before, then what's the purpose? Like, just go live. Go live. Forget about all the rules and just go live, because it doesn't really work like you thought it did. So as I began living life and just kind of figuring things out, I started realizing that although I'd heard that everything is energy in science, I just was like, whatever. I mean, I don't really care. Yeah, so you say this isn't solid, but I don't really care because it's solid to me, and that's all that matters. But now, knowing that I had lost all of those thoughts, I had gone from no worry, anxiety ever to living it every day. I knew something had shifted and I didn't know what. And as I found myself in these happy, joyful places, I could start to gain access to those thoughts again. And so it made perfect sense to me that everything was energy, and that differing frequencies help you to have access to different things. And then I started realizing, like, wow, thoughts are not really thoughts that we're thinking. We're actually not thinking. We're just tuned into a timeline where those thoughts are available to us. So if it's like a computer program and you think about even like a video game and how you go from different levels in the video game, and you're just on a different level where you have access to the thoughts on that level, and then you go to another level and you have access to the thoughts on that level, and it was incredible how I would notice it. Anytime I would take a dip, I would lose all of the thoughts. I would get into that fear, worry, and anxiety. And then I knew that just finding something to distract me from those thoughts, something that was fun and exciting, doing that for just, 5, 10 minutes, all of a sudden I have access to all those thoughts again. And so I started experiencing it enough that I started putting the pieces together and realizing, like, holy crap, this is real. This is really just energy. And I'm just gaining access to these thoughts as I find my place of happiness, joy, and love. And then I started, going back to the Bible and kind of devouring it, and then realized that in John 1, it talks about, in the beginning was the Word was God. Everything was created with and by the Word, and without the Word, nothing was made. And the Word is God. Well, duh. That means everything is created with and by God. What's the only thing that cannot be created or destroyed? Energy. It's the only thing, and everything is energy. And the Bible clearly says that everything was created by the Word. So that, just by a process of elimination, you realize that everything is energy, and there are higher frequencies and there are lower frequencies. The higher frequency is considered heaven, the lower frequency is considered hell. When God says in the Bible, I kill and I make alive, I bring life and I destroy, because we are the energy that he is speaking of, or that is being spoken of. I don't even like to give a gender, because there is no gender. It's just an essence. It's just, something that is unseen until it slows down energetically so much that it, appears solid, but truthfully, it's not. And quantum physics is literally proving the Bible accurate in so many ways. And when you go through this awakening process, before, when I would read the Bible, I was confused. It didn't really make complete sense to me. It felt very contradictory, like, I kill and I make alive, yet don't fear, because I didn't give you a spirit of fear, but the one that you're worshiping is the one that could kill you or let you live, but don't fear me because you don't have a spirit of fear. Like, that all in of itself was like, wait, and if you don't do right, I'm going to send you to hell, which means you'll burn for eternity. And then, of course, becoming a mother, I thought, that doesn't resonate with me, because I don't care what my children would do. There's never a time that I would send them to a place where they would be tortured for eternity. Because if they made a bad decision, I would know that something happened and they made a decision out of some kind of a hurt, and I wouldn't punish them for that. I would want to help heal them for that. So all that to say, it just, again, it just came from experience. And then you also start to realize the voices that you have going on within you, you recognize how they feel. And the ones that feel like life and light and airy, are coming from the higher frequencies or the higher self, God, universe. And those that feel low or dark or heavy are coming from the three-dimensional fleshly frequencies, the devil, Satan, hell, whatever you want to call it. And so when you begin to become aware of how your thoughts feel, you can realize where they're coming from. They're either coming from the flesh or they're coming from the spirit, as the Bible talks about. They're either coming from Satan or they're coming from God, but they're all within. So they're all you. But when you can be aware of that, when a thought comes to you and it's that, aha, holy cow, I know that's true because of the way it feels. Or I know that's a lie because of the way it feels. And so when I started receiving, that everything was created from the same source, and then getting the picture, one of the pictures that I got was, think of an octopus, and that granted it doesn't have unlimited legs, but let's just say there are as many legs on this octopus as there are people on this planet. At the tips of every one of those tentacles, it looks as if there are a bunch of legs, and that's all you can see. But truthfully, it's attached to this much larger source at the top, and it's really being controlled by that. Yet, I can imagine that each one of those legs, if they were a person, they would think they were separate. They would think that they weren't attached because they feel pretty separate. I'm here and this one's here. So it's got to be two different things. But truthfully, it's all the same source, just focused into a much smaller piece, is the best word. And so that's pretty much the picture that I got when it came to understanding this reality. Is everything's created from the same source, but we focus ourselves into this reality. And although I know that I am same essence, material, whatever you want to call it, as God is, no, I'm not the entire ocean, but I am a drop of the ocean, which means I have the same qualities and characteristics as the ocean, but I don't see myself as better than anyone else or higher than anyone else. I am exactly the same as everyone else, just I'm on a different radio station than they are.
Yeah. I love that. And which then goes back to why you say we're all gods, because we're part of that octopus, right? We're that tentacle as part of the octopus. I like the way you explained that. That's actually pretty cool. So I'm pretty sure that's going to resonate with a lot of people that were trying to make sense of how we're all gods, how we're all connected and stuff. And everybody, again, that's just one example that Bex just gave you with the octopus. If you resonate with a different explanation, go for it. I'm also interested. Share with me in the comments and let me know how you understand this connection that we all are, and why you think and know that you're a god. Bex, you mentioned a couple of things, but one of them also you said about quantum physics, and I do think that quantum physics is like the science version of what spirituality is. Bunch of theories, bunch of untangible things, but it's just belief that this force exists and stuff. So this is why, like to your point, this is why they're kind of catching up to each other, because one explains the other. It's however way you want to best receive that dish, that meal. You mentioned the Bible. So I want to ask you this because you've mentioned a couple of things like you went atheist at some point, and then before that you did believe in the whole church get up and things like that. And then it seems like you went more spiritual, like there's no middleman, there's no organized religion that you're following, so you're connected straight to source. But then you also talk about the Bible. So help me kind of tie in all of that. Like, what's your source? Is it the downloads? Is it the Bible? Do you use the Bible as just a reference to help to talk to people? Talk to me about that, please.
Yeah. So I used to read the Bible because that's what good girls do. And it made me feel less guilty as a Christian girl because I did my Christian duty by reading the Bible. But truthfully, I never really got anything out of it. And when I went through my dark days, the atheism and just totally abandoning everything, if you had mentioned Jesus, God, or the Bible, I would have politely excused myself, but I would have made it very clear that I had no desire to talk to you about any of it. I did my fair share of studying other religions because I was just looking for answers. And it was really interesting to me how every other religious leader spoke and taught exactly like Jesus did. So I found that to be really interesting. And then it reminded me of a thought that I had had my entire life, which is there is only one God and every religion is just a spinoff based on what part of the world you live in. But it all goes back to the exact same creator. And so I didn't understand why religions butted heads because we're all basically in this together and just have different perspectives based on our life experiences. And now coming full circle, I understand that I I don't discount the literal happenings of the Bible. I wasn't there, so I don't know that all of it happened exactly as it is worded. I don't know how much of those stories are parables versus real life, but it really doesn't matter because that book is a story about my life. And if you've gone through the awakening, you will know that when it says that the Bible, that it's an acronym for basic instructions before leaving Earth, the Bible is 100% a storybook of how we as awakened souls live our life. We come, we're buried, we bury ourselves in this tomb. We're made of earth. We are buried in this three-dimensional tomb and we experience life and all of the Daniel in the lion's den, Job and how he lost everything. Every single one of those parables, I've lived them. The story of Job stands out to me the most because Job lost everything. But here's the thing that most people don't think about or don't really recognize is at the end of everything, when he had lost everything, he said, "The thing that I feared the most has come upon me." And what he said was, I created all of this loss because I had more faith in losing it than faith in keeping it. And if we are the creators of our own reality, we create goodness and we create catastrophe because it doesn't matter what you believe in, you get what you believe, whether you like it or not. Period. And so now for me, if I'm having a little bit of a low day, believe it or not, the thing that really picks me up is to just have a conversation like this because it's as if there's this wellspring of this knowledge within me. And the moment that someone asks me a question, it's like that light switch flips on and I'm filled with light and I just pours out of me. So of course, a water hose, as the water flows through it, the hose gets wet. So I love that. But sometimes it's just opening the Bible and being able to read it now and just reading it when you're not in your highest place, it doesn't really do much. But if you read it and then you do exactly what it says, meditate on it. As you meditate on a specific scripture, you get quiet long enough that this lower three-dimensional frequency begins to quiet. And then your default frequency is that of your highest self, God, source, universe. So as you quiet your mind, as you meditate on the scripture, your frequency rises and then you get the highest perspective on the scripture, which then just connects you with that highest frequency. And then from there, because I've accessed it, I've received the highest perspective on that. Now I'm tuned in. It's like I made the phone call. I waited until they picked up and answered on the other line. They've answered. I've got my question. Now I can keep talking because I got them on the line. It's the best way to describe it. So meditation is really good, but sometimes quieting your mind, if you have dipped into some of those lower frequencies, those thoughts come at you like freaking baseballs hitting you. Like, they're pretty brutal.
Rough.
Yeah. So finding a scripture that you can focus on almost just distracts your brain enough to help you tune away from those negative thoughts as you are looking for clarity on something, like a Bible verse, and then meditating. But now, because I have come to the point of knowing the truth and knowing why I went through everything, and then coming back to the knowledge of who I am and who I was, now I'm trying to just be more in the moment intuitive, being aware that every thought that comes to me is me. Whether I like them or not, they're all still me. Either they're coming from my 3D lower frequency self or my higher self. And of course, there's a wide range in between. But then just hearing the thoughts, being aware how they feel, and then choosing to excuse them or not. And I do remember that that was the way that I maintained my highest frequency before the darkness. Was I didn't know anything about frequency or energy. It was either God or it was the devil. And I knew what God felt like, and I knew what the devil felt like. And if it felt like the devil, I was just like, nope, I'm not even listening, because everything that you have to say is a lie anyways. And I know it's you because the way it feels. And so I'm not giving you any of my attention. And it was as if, like this demonic thing would come to say, can I steal your joy? And I'd be like, are you kidding me? No, I wouldn't. It wouldn't even be a question. You'd feel it and then turn away. And of course, that's my goal, is to get back there. So now I just try to be aware. If there is a thought process going on in my brain, it means that there are two people existing, God and Satan. So anytime there's a conversation going on, I make myself aware, okay, that's my lower self and my higher self talking. And I get to decide which one is going to win this battle. And I need to decide now, because if I don't, then whichever one I give the most attention to is going to win this battle. And then it's going to take me a little bit of time to find my way back up to the top. And so just being intuitive in the moment now is kind of my thing.
I love that. And I wonder if, for those of you that are watching and listening to Bex explain this conversation between God and Satan, do any of you ever experience that? Do you ever hear those two voices? Are you ever part of that conversation? And what do you do? Which one entices you the most? How do you live your life? How do you decide what's right and what's wrong? Which do I turn left? Do I turn right? Share that with me as well, because I'm also intrigued by it. So for the sake of time and everything, I'm going to hit you with some somewhat rapid questions about big topics, and then see if you can actually just give me your perspective in a short version so we can hit the next question from there. So let's see how this works. And these are just kind of off the dome here. Construct. Okay, this has been used by a lot of biblical terms and a lot of spiritual leaders and whatnot, that we live in a construct. A lot of the ancient text has depicted that we live in this like plane with the firmament, whereas for NASA, it's the only one that says that we live in this globe. So regarding that topic, what do you think we live in?
I think that we live in a holographic matrix. I feel like that everything is just the essence of awareness, and that awareness has focused itself into this 3-dimensional reality. I do believe in the firmament because the Bible talks about it, and if there's anything I know about the Bible, is that it is true. Whether you want to believe it or not, it is true. You just have to see it from a higher perspective. And I don't believe that anything is happening by accident. So whether you believe in a globe or a flat earth, there is a reason for both. Ultimately, I think that, well, let me say this. Ultimately, I know that on every timeline, there are truths, and the truths change based on your perspective. But the higher your perspective goes, the more clarity you come to know. So there really isn't any untruths. They are all truth, just depending upon your perspective.
I like it. Thank you. Consciousness. Big topic, but just in your understanding. And I don't ever like to really say the word, but in your belief, because that's selective. So, in your understanding from what you know, what is consciousness?
Consciousness is awareness. That's it. If you sit long enough right now, if you just stop for just a moment and pull yourself out of what you're seeing and what you're hearing and come back to yourself and just be aware that there is something looking through your eyes. There is something hearing through your ears. There is something exiting from your mouth. But what is that? That is awareness. And the awareness is who we are. And it's not anything physical or tangible. It's just aware of what is happening because it's here. We are here for the experience. We are the awareness that is inhabiting these physical bodies. But everything is also that same awareness, which is why they're proving that even plants are sentient because it is all created from the same awareness.
Yeah, I love that. It's something that I have on my website. I say a lot on my shows that my understanding is that we are here to experience what we're not, you know? And a lot of people believe that we're humans trying to have this spiritual experience, but you and I know it's the other way around. We're having a human, before when like you said, when God said, "Let there be light," or spoken word, whatever, we weren't this, we were something else. We were this spiritual, energetic being. So we're out here just taking a pause. What I would think, and let me see if you agree or disagree with my thought on this, is that if we are these gods, like you say, and like I say, then you know, we have no limitations. So in order to have a full understanding of what we truly are, we got to take a pause from being omnipotent and just be this. We got to learn we got to feel what suffering is, emotions, to be mortal, to be scared. And then once we have this little fun experience, like, okay, I tried it out. It's pretty cool. I learned some stuff. We go back, like you said, into this spiritual being. And now we have more of a fuller understanding of the totality that we are. How do you feel about that statement and that mindset?
Yeah, I agree completely. Like people ask me when I'm coaching them through their awakening journey, they'll, ask me about the unknown. And I tell them, without this experience, you're all knowing. So, of course, you come with the full knowledge that you will not know anything because that's part of the journey. Because outside of these physical bodies, you are all knowing, all powerful. So, if you have everything, know everything, are everything, that can get extremely monotonous. So it only makes sense that you would want to experience something opposite of what you truly are for the experience of it. So all of the emotions are gifts because outside of this three-dimensional reality, you only access love. So everything that you're accessing here in this three-dimensional reality is a gift. And everything that you think is suffering is still just a gift. It's all an experience. And I tell my clients this all the time. The only suffering that we experience is our own self inflicted suffering because it doesn't really exist. It is our finite human minds thinking that something is going wrong when nothing has ever gone wrong. It's all happening perfectly and it's all happening for the larger picture. You only see like for me, when I went through my darkness, I could only see my own little speck of the world. And I didn't understand why it didn't go the way I thought it should. But I couldn't see the bigger picture. And if I could have seen the bigger picture, I'd have probably checked out because I wouldn't have wanted to go through it because it was hard. But now, coming full circle, I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. It was the hardest, most challenging thing I've ever experienced, yet I couldn't be the version of myself that I am today without it. So if I had known now, or if I'd known then what I know now, there'd have been no suffering. And if you look back at your past, the things that you were suffering about in your past were only things you suffered because you thought something had gone wrong. But hindsight, you know that it happened perfectly. It just takes a little bit of distance from it in order to see it the way that it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I I do have understanding that there is a heaven or heavens, but not in the typical way of, there's a sky daddy with a magic wand sitting on a throne. Not that kind of heaven, just different higher versions of this low density, right? That's what I mean by heaven or heavens plural. But with that being said, because you mentioned something about we are our biggest judges, like we judge ourselves, right? So in your understanding, is there a hell per se, or do we create that hell?
Well, there's a hell. I lived it for 3 years. It's not a hell outside of this physical body. There is no hell outside of this physical body. There is, let me say that louder. There is no hell outside of this physical body. So if there are people who are fearing going to some place of burning it for eternity, that does not exist. It's not a real thing. As a matter of fact, I fully grasped what hell was when I went through my darkest days. And when I tell you that it was the most intense heat, literally the most intense heat I had ever experienced, and it came from within. And anytime a fear thought would come, I would begin to feel this burning on the inside, and it would radiate from the inside out. My face and my entire body would turn red, and I would begin to profusely sweat. And it would last for a few minutes. And it didn't mean that it was going to be over, but it would start to relieve, a little bit. But I would be soaking wet with sweat. And if I didn't catch it and those fear thoughts kept coming, that heat kept coming. And I thought, this is hell. Like it was, and all it is me experiencing the deepest, darkest fear, the illusion of separation. And fear is not who we are. And it's, if you think about it, if God, the consciousness, the Christ consciousness is God, and you're down here in the lowest frequency, this is the light, this is the darkness. And when you have this much separation from the truth of who you are and who you are being in the moment, this is what hell feels like. So if you've experienced what some people call them a hot flash, and they appoint them mostly to women who are going through menopause. Well, here's the thing. Typically, when you hit a certain age, you plan this path before you come. This is what I'm going to live. This is the journey I want to experience. And because of external things where you give your power away by trying to make other people happy, you abandon your path and you end up diverted somewhere way off of what you planned for. And by the time you get to be middle age, it starts to really affect you because you diverted that far away from your path. And so, of course, it's about the same age for everyone that they start to experience it. But I have found that there are a lot of men that experience it that they don't talk about it. And most men say it's when I get nervous, if something, that I'm fearful about something, I get really hot and sweaty. That's hell. And it can go deeper and deeper and deeper.
I love that. Gentlemen, if you're listening out there, take note. That's, I concur with you. I concur with Bex. It makes sense. It resonates. And again, guys, anything in this conversation, what resonates with you, keep it. If it doesn't, not for you. It's okay. It's okay. No judgment here. I'm just happy and glad, and I appreciate all of you for just still tuning in and just being part of this conversation in your own way. If you're out there just driving your car or riding a bike or taking a walk or just, in the kitchen making a meal for your family, as long as you guys are tuning in to Beyond Frequency 369, listening to this conversation, getting to know Bex, getting to know more about me, I love it all. So I appreciate it. So Bex, I have 1,001 more questions for you, but I'm going to ask you one more part of this episode before I get into my end of the episode questions. Okay. So I'm trying to pick one of the best ones here. So going off of something that you mentioned a lot about kind of like how we chose or we planned this experience. So let's talk about that for for people who are listening and are probably asking, why does she keep saying that we planned this? Why would I plan all of this horrible stuff that's happened to me or whatever the case is, right? So, Bex, enlighten the audience and let us know, what is it that you mean by we've planned this, and why have you chosen your path? Let's go with that.
Because there is a bigger purpose than our own individual lives, we choose a path that will benefit the whole and is a pretty fantastic experience for us. Because when we plan what we come for, that path, we know to follow it because it is the desires of our heart. And I remember even back in my religious days, I would hear that scripture, God gives you the desires of your heart. And so many people interpreted that as, I have a desire and therefore God will give it to me. And I thought, that's very shallow thinking, but I don't disagree with it. And then I received. I gave you the desires of your heart so that you would follow them as you lived your experience, because everything that you want is already lined the path that you have planned. In other words, you will get the desires of your heart, but you have to follow the desires of your heart in order to be on the path where those things exist. Like, for instance, if you're playing a video game and you pick a certain world, and this world is, I'm supposed to get all of the purple gumdrops, and you take the path where, there are a lot of purple gumdrops, then you are on your path. But let's say you see a pink one and you think, oh, I'd like to see what that experience is. Sure, absolutely. You have the freedom to do that. But if you don't detour back to your path that you had planned, it's going to cause suffering. Like, I know for me, I'm I'm tiny, I'm 5'2", but for me, like, I always wanted to be Wonder Woman. I wanted to be a superhero. I wanted to be fit. I wanted to be muscular. I wanted to be strong. I didn't want to be, some feminine little lady that, could just sit quietly and mind her manners. I wanted to be different. I wanted to stand out. I loved having a big old truck and raising and rescuing pit bulls and training horses and getting on them and riding them, and have, these 1,000-pound animals literally respond to you because you can join up with them. And I wanted to be big and powerful. And I knew from the time I was a kid that I came to change the world. And I didn't really know what that looked like, but I wanted to change the world in a big way. Well, I don't think that that's everyone's desire. I think there are plenty of people that, like, I do figure competitions. You get in 4-inch acrylic heels with a rhinestone bathing suit to have judges tell you if your physique is top notch. I don't think that every woman wants to do that, but yet it's passion for me. So if I'm not doing it, then I'm going to experience suffering. And when I am doing it, I feel alive and I feel amazing. And that's what I mean. It's like, actually watch someone's near death experience, and she said that when she was a drug addict, she was actually experiencing her near death experience because of an overdose. And she went all the way back, and she said it was like she was in the grocery store shopping for the experiences of her life. And that was one of the experiences that she had chosen in order for her to be a light for others who are going through it. And she said, I remember she said specifically when they were saying, okay, it's time for you to go back to your body. She's like, no, no, no. You see that body. I don't want to go back to that. That body is broken and bruised. And then they said, well, you don't have to. We can pick here are another group of options that you can choose from. And these were children, and their journeys were harder than the ones that she had already gone through. And she's like, well, I'm already halfway through the hard part. I might as well just go back to this body. And today she travels the world helping set people free from the thing that she experienced. So yeah, she chose a hard life, but today she's living free because she's doing what she's passionate about and making her living off of her passion. So, in a nutshell, that's
Yeah.
what I
I love it. I love it. And I'm gonna have a great time going back to review this because there's a lot of good stuff that you're mentioning here. And hopefully, folks, rewind this thing, play it back 2 or 3 times. Cause I mean, sometimes this is a full meal. Sometimes you can't digest everything, but it's good stuff and everything. So I commend all of you for listening. Bex, I want to plug in on your behalf. You mentioned it when you first started off. Trying to find my notes here. You have a community. What do you call it again? The community?
It's called Awaken to Power.
Yeah. So in a few sentences, again, what is the purpose of the community? Like, oh, that to folks that might be looking for it.
Yeah. So the Awaken to Power is just a free community that you can join. And every morning after my meditation, I'll just post something that is relevant to what those of us who are going through the awakening process would need. Just a reminder of who you are, a reminder that this is just a season and this too shall pass. And then we also have a separate membership. And for those members, we do lives every single Sunday. Right now, we're in the middle of our 6-week mentorship, which is called Awaken and Anchored. We'll be doing those every 6 weeks. So once one finishes, we'll do another. And we only do 10 people at a time just because I want to make sure it's very intentional. But the platform just is really for people who are experiencing all of this. It's different than anything you've ever lived, and you're just trying to feel normal. And you can't have a conversation with hardly anyone about it because people don't understand. So, this is a platform where you can just come and talk freely and have conversations, and people know exactly what you're talking about. They can relate, and you feel.
I love it. So yeah, so it's basically like this conversation just with, 8 more people.
Yes,
And then you're all on there and just kind of give everybody a visual, right? We're all on there and we're just like all like-minded, all curious, all want to talk about this. It's kind of like I would say the word therapeutic, if you will.
it's
Very
very.
therapeutic.
Yeah, and then also, like, whenever I'll pop on TikTok Live just randomly, I don't like to commit because I like the freedom to choose, but if I'm gonna do it, I'll post it on the group. "Hey, guys, I'll be on TikTok at 6 p.m. Is there any conversations that you want me to start? Any topics you wanna talk about?" And they'll post like, "Hey, I had this situation. Can you give me some clarity on this or this?" And so when I get on, I'll talk for about 10 minutes to give everyone time to get on there, and then I'll pose the question and then provide the answer, which then sparks more questions and answers and just brings clarity to people who are going through this process.
Yeah, man, I love a good structure mentorship call, because sometimes I've seen where people just get on calls and everybody's like, so what do we talk about? So I like how you set it up, give everybody a little time, drop some gems in there, and then just kind of go from there. So I like that. So guys, again, if you're looking for a place to talk to like-minded folks, I mean, you guys already know my community, but if my community doesn't fit, check out Bex's community. And it doesn't matter where you go, we're all talking the same language, we're all talking the same thing, and the goal is to help you, what I would call it a spiritual companion, if you will. We're not telling you what to do or how to do it. We're just walking with you, right? We're just walking right next to you, Bex, again, we have to at some point, and folks, if you really like Bex and you want her to come in for round 2, tell me about it. Send me emails. You guys go on my website, talk to me, comments. I'm going to put clips on TikTok, YouTube, whatever. Comment there and just say, hey, we want Bex again. We have more questions. And Bex, if the people want it, will you come back?
Of course.
Yeah, see, I knew she was going to say that, but I wanted you guys to hear that. So again, drop your comments in there, ask your questions, and we'll figure that out. So Bex, all right, as we wrap the show up, I'm going to ask you 6 questions to ask all my guests. Again, no right or wrong answer, just yours. So the first question is, beyond all the knowledge and experiences that you've gained thus far, what still leaves you in awe or makes you question everything?
What leaves me in awe is the amount of love you can have for the people who you at one time thought hurt you the most because you realize that they were instrumental in helping you become the version of yourself. And just like in the Bible, where Jesus created his prosecutors, his crucifiers, even his betrayers, in order for him to be able to demonstrate unconditional love. And he hung on that cross and said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." Yet they were all necessary for the greatest miracle in the world to happen, and to have the access to that knowledge and to truly understand that my life could not be the amazing life that it is today without the people who I once thought were my greatest betrayers now are my biggest heroes.
That is huge. As you were saying that, I had a vision, if you will, of a scenario like that. Kid in school gets bullied, ends up learning how to, do karate to defend himself. Fast forward, he has a family. Intruder comes in the house. He uses his skill set to protect his family. And that was thanks to the bullying situation that he had when he was a kid.
Exactly.
I mean, so all of you, anybody who's having a situation that seems negative right now, or you had it, take a moment, reflect on it, and don't look at it as why me, why me. Don't play the victim. Just say, okay, this happened. Now, what am I learning from it?
Yes.
Just some advice. Next question, Bex. What is, to your understanding, what is the ultimate purpose of life?
The ultimate purpose in life is to have fun. It's, this is the roller coaster of a lifetime. We get on the roller coaster for all the dips and the turns and the climbs and the drops and the unknown. Because the moment you can predict a roller coaster, it's no longer fun, and we're ready to move on to the next exciting wild ride. And that's what this human experience is. It's a wild ride of unknown twists and turns and climbs and drops. And if you can embrace them all and trust that they're all working out exactly as they should, then suffering doesn't even have to exist.
And you may have already answered this, but let's try it again. What is your definition of God?
My definition of God is a name or a label that we give to something that we think is outside of ourselves until we come to the realization that it was within us the entire time.
Bex, what is love?
Love unconditionally means I see you, I hear you, and no matter what you do, no matter what you say, I love you because I understand that you, as a human, are only and always a culmination of all of your experiences, and I will never know the shoes that you've walked. I'll never know the journey you've walked. I've never been in your shoes, but I can love you and understand that anything that you're doing is simply out of you doing your very best given the life that you've lived.
Yeah. Something there that you just said there is part of my outro. So you're going to hear it. It's going to sound familiar to you, but I like what you just said. 'Cause I was like, wow, I was like, that sounds familiar, but you'll hear it. And Bex, if you could go back to little Bex, let's say even 10-year-old Bex, what would you tell her now?
I would say, Bex, this is going to be one of the most challenging experiences that you've ever gone through. And there are going to be days that you're going to think that something has gone terribly wrong. Trust me when I say it's all going to work out for your good, and you will be that superhero that you are dreaming of being.
Love it. I love it. And she heard you. She definitely heard you. You just talked to her just now, and she was like, "Was that me?" Yeah, that was her. That was her. And Bex, tell the audience once again, how can they find you?
So TikTok is at Bex Starling, also Awaken to Power on the Heartbeat app. I actually forgot to mention this. I have a podcast as well called Broken to Beautiful. So we might have to get you on there. And Instagram, Awaken to Power as well. And then on YouTube, it's Broken to Beautiful.
Absolutely. And folks, I will have all that for your convenience in the description below. So just scroll down, click. But before you do that, like and subscribe, right? Like and subscribe and share this conversation to not just one person, not just two, but at least three people. Because again, 369, right? So 3, 6, or the 9, pick one, or 369 people. whatever comes first, right? But go ahead and share this conversation because I know if you liked it, someone else will like it too. And Bex, before I hit my outro, give you one last words of advice or suggestion or motivation that you like to give to the audience that are listening right now.
Learn to love this life because it is an experience and every day is a gift. And even if you're going through something you don't understand, just like every other experience, there is a purpose. If you can trust that it is all working out for you, it'll be a much easier ride.
And Bex, it was an amazing conversation. There's, again, so much more to talk about. And I might even drop in on one of your mentorship deals. So who knows where this goes and everything, because I'm kind of curious now what your community discusses. But if all of you that are listening and watching, if you're curious, only way to find out is to go sign up, free, right? It's free, right?
Yeah. The link is on the TikTok and the Instagram in my bio.
There you go, guys. I mean, it's that easy. It's that easy. Folks, as a reminder, again, like, subscribe, go ahead and make some comments, share it with other people because it helps the algorithm, not just talking about things here in the United States, but it goes overseas as well. So I want everybody to hear what my guests are talking about because they have some good gems, and I know they'll be inspiring and helping people realize who they truly are before the world convinces them otherwise. And with that said, folks, as a reminder, I love you. I see you. I hear you. I am you. Continue to ask questions. Don't be afraid to pull back the curtain and take a deeper look. Push forward, always reaching beyond the frequency.